Thanks for coming out this evening, and hopefully the presentation will be as informative as you expect. My name is Craig Kessinger. I have about 40 plus odd years of metaphysical background. Basically that is a self-tutelage, although I went to a college and tried to get my certification of or degree in divinity, and I was rejected. I was told I taught too much Kabbalah. You should teach Kabbalah, not instead of metaphysics. And the thing that was strange was the college taught parapsychology, not metaphysics. So one of the first things I want to kind of let you know is that metaphysics is very different than what certain levels of spirituality consider themselves. Some of this is polluting, unfortunately. And a lot of it, though, does share an enlightenment because the path is not, we are maybe on a collective path, but our individual paths have to take the information and register it as it comes. That means using your own consciousness to determine things. So, a lot of times I do not present information as too much what it is I think personally. I like to present information that is usable to the viewer. The decisions of these things are totally up to you. So tonight's talk is a little bit of, we'll get right into this. First I'd like to, let me open first here with a quick prayer if we may. Most of the ceremony I do is Lakota. I myself am not Lakota, I am Ute Aztec. Again, this is what I'm saying. My ideals are not necessarily the ones that always get presented in the presentations I do. It's considered just a global sense of information. I do this for the love of it. But, so some of the ceremony is in Lakota. So I just want to take a little moment here and do a quick opening prayer if we could. Set your hearts with me. Atayende Kenya, and Ushtiae, Oasteaka. Namahati, Maka the Tina Case, I know you wash out. No one gate, one Kantanka, even Mr. Tapi Skaya, Ayas. So anyway, traditions and spirituality, Native American rite and ceremony. What I find interesting in a lot of the work that I do and I try to present is that I have a lot of background in not just Kabbalah, but the Tao, the I Ching, Mesoamerican and Native American cosmologies, and the Egyptology. So I've watched a lot of research go down, not necessarily so much from when you go into a bookstore. It's not so much from the speculative area of the bookstore, it's more so from archaeology, the sciences, the physics. This is where I base a lot of my information and draw it from. So right off the bat, oh, is this on?
Should be.
It might have changed. So right off the bat, for such a small and seemingly insignificant world, the diversity of human traditions are enigmatic, basically from the four corners of the world, the 8 pillars of heaven, and what are referred to as the scaffolding of creation. These are terms that will get used a lot when we take a look at a lot of these global traditions. And we're going to start off with some of the more basic ones, that I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with. And some of this will be skipping through. There's a lot of information here. I want to try to run through it as best as possible. There are discs available that have the same presentation on it, okay? And those are up front. So, looking at nature all around us, we cannot help but marvel at its raw beauty and rhythm. And the thing that's unique about rhythm is it doesn't matter if it's sound or light or other essences of energies. When we talk global traditions, we start talking about these energies because these energies are the things that rivaled religion for so long a time. And religion is not something to try to get into too much as it is. Those traditions are also based in mythologies and legends, the same as all this other information. Forgoing the fact that there is a Bible, and make the Bible, or any of these sacred texts, the Quran, the I Ching, all of them, to make them just books of information, without all the political and religious considerations given to them. We get a very different story of the world that we live in when we do this. When people back off of all the precepts and the controlling essences of science and religion in the way that they argue and misfire and debate. So all this information has to be released, and this is one of the things I try to do here. But one of the things that is interesting to note is that over hundreds and hundreds of years, in consideration of what these energies are placed by the Earth, we look at some places that are basic energy centers. These begin at the root Mount Shasta in California. These are considered the 7 major chakras of the Earth. We are familiar mostly with what the term chakra is as an energy center. It doesn't matter whether it's in your body, it doesn't matter whether it's on the floor or the chair that you're sitting on. It has relative energy. The sacral is at Lake Titicaca, solar plexus is Uluru Conjuncta, heart is at Glastonbury and Shaftesbury in England, the throat, the Great Pyramid of Giza, third eye, I wish I could pronounce that, Kula Marrakshia, and the crown at Mount Kilas. So these are interesting centers of the world, and they create a map that does have a pattern to it. What we want to give this is pure relative. But I find it interesting that some of the ways that these are gridded out definitely do put perspective into some things. So this is one of the world's collections of sacred temples, noticing that they are all within certain latitudes. Some of them a little further north than before. One of the things that this tells me is that in the essence of those temples being built, somewhere along the line, the tilt of the planet was different. In some areas, 15 to 18 degrees in difference. Dr. Hagens has their energy map as well. And this is more relative to the flower of life geometries and such. But we take a look at all these structures, and the thing that I note about this is that one of the lectures I gave, I had somebody ask me one time, well, I think all the pyramids should all be part of some kind of planetary protection grid. This isn't science fiction. This is mythology and legend. And a lot of times I find it difficult for certain people to respect them as more than just stories that people told around the fire, although that's exactly where most of them came about. Most of them were built by a priesthood that existed in these areas. So that's one of the things to consider, is that it was mostly the higher representation of intellect that went into any of these structures. People can call it alien or whatever they want to. The point being is that I have a problem with is, if you reference something to being alien so much, doesn't that make humans worthless? Come on. Give humanity the opportunity to have had the wisdom and the insight. And the reason why every one of these is different is because the function of the energy in each one of these areas is different. Not just from its religious perspectives, but from how that energy worked within those priesthoods. Stonehenge is a good example. So this is actually a copy of a slide. I just noticed that. This is a copy of a slide. The red underlining there in some of the words is because the spell check doesn't like them. This is a copy from another one of my talks that I gave on sacred circles. on sacred circles, but dealing with the geometries of them. Stonehenge is interesting because if we take a look at its original design, even at 4,500 years ago, this design is more complex than someone would consider. I look at it a little bit differently, basically because of my background in sacred geometries, than what some others have written. This is the typical crosshairs of Stonehenge, looking through its major gate, or the primary avenue that comes into Stonehenge. And it's noted here that these crosshairs, what I found interesting was, in certain sacred geometries and sonics, or what cinemascoping can do, we know that when you see a round circle, that usually has a field of energy to it. These three inner circles here are relative to the Sun, Venus, Earth, and Mars by position. So, dead center here is your Sun. Coming out, we have Venus to Earth relative to Mars relative. When you get into the mathematics of the distances between those circles, what's unique is some of this science begins to show itself. This was another one of the things I read of. There's an article because they're now doing a lot of sonic testing on the ground there at Stonehenge. So the guy is doing a lot of mapping there. But they have the idea that this is the decagon aspect. In other words, it's 10-sided. My thinking is if it's a calendar and we have 12 months to a year, and that mythology basically follows regardless of whether it's Julian calendar thinking or Gregorian, which is the current calendar that we are using. That didn't make any sense to me, and the alignments are not necessarily there. I got to thinking about the pyramid ratio. Where is the relationship between Stonehenge to the pyramids? Is there a relationship? Yes, there is. A large reference. Not to say that they were engineered by the same architects, but definitely to say that they were using a relative source of common energy. So when we take a look at the pyramid ratio basically is the height of the pyramid down along the breadth of its sides, including its base. And when you turn that sideways to get a flat image against any of the flat sides which face the cardinal points off those pyramids, north, east, west, south, you get a triangle that's not a typical isosceles triangle. It's obligated. So when you take that and you put it base to base and then close it up a little bit, and the symbol should be common to you if you understand what the seal of Solomon is, or what's commonly known as the Star of David, the inversion of those triangles. What I did here was I faced the tips of them to the typical cardinal points, which meant I took one set of pyramid, reflected the aspects to it, and then turned it 90 degrees as well. So what you're looking at here is a dodecagon level or instinct of the energy use in Stonehenge rather than the 10-sided that they are using, which is becoming confusing to them, the ones that are employing the sciences. I would recommend they try to take a look at this because not only does it square the circle in the center, which is a huge representation of Earth to Moon, it's also noting the fact that it has all the alignments, but the stone boring holes that are off to the side here, and up here, and there's two more over there if we go back. See the brown crosshairs right here? These two, and the way that they cross over? Those are the alignments where the sun rises and the sun sets, in angular comparison to the center of this wheel. That's Stonehenge. So when we come back here and take this, notice how I got almost a perfect rectangle off the cardinal points for those alignments. That too gave me some evidence. Again, this is all part of another discussion, but I thought it relative because we have to understand that these things, that when the sacred geometries are applied, that's where we get verification of things. You can dig into the ground as far as you want to. The information is encoded. Again, not alien. Humans did this. So the significance of the 56 that comes into the Stonehenge coverings is this is more than likely the setup that Stonehenge had in its final days before it rotted off. is not just a calendar. It's a temple. And the fact that they have found graves and other, artifacts around it and stuff has a lot to do with what's known as the shattering of vessels in the Kabbalah. Again, a global tradition that will go under different names, but is applied in commonality. This reflects the fact that somewhere along the line, globally, there was only one, maybe two, if three, different global priesthoods that managed everything. And then we get into Atlantis, which is a whole nother Pandoran box. So stay tuned and come back. Anyway, moving on, the pyramids are very interesting because they reflect what's commonly known as Zep-Tepe, or what is reflected as the first time in the works of Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval. Are those names familiar to anybody?